Around midnight, Mr. Palmero, the school guidance counselor, told everyone to get into their sleeping bags and settle down. Then he said there was no talking for the rest of the night, and he didn't want to hear a peep out of anyone. Every once in a while, somebody would cut the cheese, and that made Mr. Palmero really mad because he couldn't figure out who was doing it. After what happened earlier with the pictures, I think the grown-ups were just really sensitive about anything having to do with butts. Mr. Palmero said that if anyone needed to pass gas, they had to go behind the curtain on the stage to do it. So then a lot of the boys started taking turns telling Mr. Palmero they needed to go behind the curtain. And then they'd make the most obnoxious noises you can imagine, like... That went on for a while. And it kind of reached its peak when David Rosenberg went down to the music room and brought back a tuba. He went... I don't know if it was a coincidence or not, but right about that time, the heat went off in the auditorium. In fact, I think someone turned the air conditioner on. All I know is that everyone stayed in their sleeping bags after that. After a while, Mr. Palmero fell asleep, but all the boys were still awake. Some guys were saying this was like prison, and people were talking about busting out of there and going home. The problem was that all the exits were padlocked. I guess we should have known what we were getting into when they called this thing a lock-in. Albert Sandy said he'd seen a movie where some guy busted out of prison with a spoon, and a lot of people got pretty excited about that idea. But it turns out that was just a bunch of Hollywood baloney, because we got some spoons from the kitchen and we couldn't even make a dent in the linoleum floor. At about 1:30 in the morning, someone noticed flashing lights coming from outside, so we all went to the back of the auditorium to see what was going on. There was a guy from the tow truck company, and he was walking around Mr. Palmero's car, which was parked in a handicapped spot. We tried to get the towing guy's attention so he could break us out of the school. But the guy never heard us, and he towed Mr. Palmero's car. I thought about waking Mr. Palmero up to tell him, but I figured we should just let him get his rest. By this time, it was so cold in the auditorium that us boys packed ourselves together like sardines to preserve body heat. I figured it was probably nice and toasty in the library media room, and I was seriously thinking about going back there and joining the girls. But I figured I'd get caught, and I'd just be back where I started. I think I probably fell asleep around 2:30. Then, at 3 o'clock, there was a pounding on the back door that woke everybody up. Mr. Palmero unlocked the door, and there was a bunch of angry parents standing outside. Apparently, they'd been trying to call their kids to make sure everything was okay, but the kids weren't answering because Mr. Tanner took everyone's cell phones. So then the parents called one another, and everyone got all in a panic. To make a long story short, the parents who came to the school took their kids home with them, and that left the only two kids who didn't have their own cell phones.
Just go watch Netflix on
Me
Mom's
and
Room.
Rowley. So that was pretty awkward. Something tells me this whole lock-in idea was just a scheme set up by the parents and teachers to turn us kids off to boy-girl parties. And if that's true, then mission accomplished. Monday. I spent the weekend trying to recover from the lock-in, since I got zero sleep on Friday night. But I think the whole experience was just too much for my body, because this morning when I woke up, I was sick. I admit I faked being sick before to get out of going to school, but Mom usually calls my bluff, threatening doctors and, blood work. But today, Mom took my temperature, and I guess it must have been pretty high, because she said I needed to stay in bed. She said she had to spend the day at the library to study for her final test tonight, and she wouldn't be able to stay home to take care of me. Well, that kind of stunk, because the only good thing about being sick is having someone fuss over you. Mom said Isabella was working today, and that if there was an emergency, I could go to her. But after Mom left, I locked my bedroom door because I was afraid Isabella might try to come into my room to take her nap. I must have dozed off around noon, and when I woke up, there was a lot of commotion downstairs. The TV was turned up really loud, and I could hear what sounded like a bunch of women talking. I looked out the window, and there were a ton of cars in the driveway and on the street. I didn't know what was going on, so I just stayed in my room. About a half hour later, Mom pulled up in her car and went inside the house. 5 minutes after that, all these women streamed out the door, including Isabella. Mom walked upstairs to my room, and she was really steamed. She said she decided to come home early from the library to take care of me, and when she did, she walked in on a soap opera viewing party with all the maids from the neighborhood. The TV was going, "Kiss me, Rex. Kiss me to help me snap out of my amnesia." Tonight, Mom had another house meeting and said that Isabella's services would no longer be required, and that we were all going to have to pitch in around the house. I was happy to hear that, because now I can stop checking my bed for pantyhose socks. Tuesday. When I got to school today, Rowley was waiting by my locker, and he had a huge smile on his face. Then I noticed he had a big pimple right in the middle of his forehead. Most people would stay home from school if they had a zit like that. But here's what Rowley said. "My mom says I'm becoming a man." Well, that really irked me for some reason. But that wasn't the end of it. Later on in the day, I saw Rowley hanging out near the older kids' lockers, saying, "Sup, fellas?" So I guess he thinks just because he got a pimple, he's part of their club now or something. I think it's really pathetic that Rowley's trying to impress people with a stupid zit. And believe me, I'm not jealous or anything. But this is a kid who still sleeps with a pile of stuffed animals every night. So it doesn't make any sense that he would get his first pimple before I got mine. I will say the whole episode has got me thinking. I've been waiting to hit my growth spurt, or at least start growing some facial hair. But things have been kind of slow going. And now that Rowley's got a pimple, I'm kind of anxious to get things moving along. When I got home from school today, I checked myself in the mirror to see if anything seemed different. But everything looked exactly the same as it always does. So after dinner, I asked Mom and Dad when I could expect things to start happening. But they told me that when they were my age, they were way behind their classmates when it came to this sort of thing. My dad said, "Why, I was a very late bloomer." And my mom said, "Really? So was I." And they both laughed over it. Then Dad told me not to expect to get a lot of facial hair even when I'm an adult, because he's a grown man and he only needs to shave once or twice a week. Well, that was some really bad news. In this country, they're always saying you can grow up and be anything you want, but now I realize that's not true. I can name at least half a dozen jobs I can never have if I can't grow a beard or a mustache, or at least some decent stubble. Magician, pirate, lumberjack, artist, cop, criminal. Wednesday. Today was day 2 of Rowley's pimple, and he was walking around with his hair parted like a curtain so everyone could get an eyeful of his zit. I couldn't really take another day of this, and I decided to do something about it. So I wrote a note and handed it to him in the hallway. It said, "Dear Rowley, nobody likes your zit. Signed, the girls." And I'm happy to say my note did the trick. But right before lunchtime, something totally crazy happened. Our class was heading to the cafeteria, and when we walked through the hallway where the older kids have their lockers, Jordan Jury was standing there with a few of his friends. Jordan stopped us and said, "Hey, dudes, you're invited to my party."
Hey, dude.
I couldn't believe it. Like I said before, Jordan Jury's parties are legendary. But the best thing about Jordan Jury's parties is that there are girls there.
Girls
Which means
there.
his parties are totally different from the kind I usually get invited to. The point is, this is a real party we're talking about, and not like the lock-in, where there were a million chaperones running the show. I have no idea why Jordan Jury invited me and Rowley to his party. It could have been my math book, or Rowley's zit, or both. But it was pretty clear that he thought me and Rowley were friends and that the invitation was a package deal. And I didn't want to do anything that might change his mind, so I threw my arm around Rowley and said, "We accept."
Me accept.
I can definitely pretend I'm friends with Rowley for one night if it means I get to play spin the bottle with a bunch of girls who are a whole grade ahead of me. Thursday.
Thursday.
You'll never believe this,
I don't believe
but
this.
Mom's not letting me go to Jordan Jury's party. And it's not because it's a boy-girl party, or because a bunch of older kids are going to be there. It's because Uncle Gary's wedding is this weekend. This has got to be some kind of world record for bad timing. I begged Mom to let me stay home and go to the party, but she wouldn't budge, even after I promised I'd go to Uncle Gary's next wedding. Mom said I can't skip it, because I'm in the wedding party, and I can't let Uncle Gary down. The thing is, I've been in Uncle Gary's wedding party every single time, and I'll tell you exactly how that's gonna go. Uncle Gary's gonna ask me to be a reader. Adults always pick a kid to read something from the Old Testament at weddings, because everyone thinks it's cute when the kids can't pronounce the names. Like, and then Ezekiel said to Zekid, what? I knew Mom wasn't going to change her mind, so I didn't spend a lot of time trying to fight it. I just went up to my room and called Rowley. I told Rowley I couldn't go to the party, so he couldn't really go either. I explained that it would be unfair for him to go while I was stuck at my uncle's wedding. But Rowley said he's practically a grown-up now, and he can make his own decisions, so he's going to the party no matter what. I got so mad that I hung up the phone. Now do you see what I mean about Rowley? That's just the kind of selfish move that makes me glad we aren't friends anymore. Saturday. Yesterday, my family piled into the car and drove down to Gammy's for Uncle Gary's wedding. I was in a really bad mood because of the whole party thing, and because of something else, too. I remember that I'm supposed to get the talk from Gammy this weekend, and I am seriously not in the mood for a lecture right now. The last lecture I got was from Dad's brother, Uncle Joe, who told me that since I'm in middle school, I need to start thinking about my future. Uncle Joe drew up a chart that showed me everything I needed to do between now and the end of high school to increase my chances of getting into a good college and landing a job after that. So basically, Dad and Uncle Joe have the next 10 years of my life planned out for me. Anyway, I was thinking about all this, but then something happened that snapped me out of my bad mood. Mom called Gammy to tell her we were running a little late because we had to stop to pick up my tuxedo. That got my attention. I've never had to wear a tuxedo for any of Uncle Gary's other weddings, and that could only mean one thing. I'm one of the groomsmen. The night before the wedding, the groomsmen throw the guy who's getting married a really wild party. I've seen enough cable TV to know that's something I definitely want to be a part of. I actually felt a little bad for Robert, because that meant he got passed over. But I figure I could take some pictures of the party so he could see everything he missed. Mostly, though, I felt happy. Because while Rowley's at some lame middle school party, I'm going to be riding in a limo and having the time of my life. So we'll see who's a man after this weekend. And as a bonus, at the wedding, I'll be paired up with one of the bridesmaids. I'm just crossing my fingers that Sonia has some cute friends. On the way to Gammy's house, Mom made me promise that I wouldn't wipe away my relatives' kisses, because she says it's rude. But I can't really help it. When some aunt or cousin gives me a wet kiss on my cheek, I start thinking about the bacteria multiplying on my face, and I get all twitchy. The last time we went to Gammy's, I brought some of those antibacterial wipes with me to take care of the problem. But I promised Mom I wouldn't wipe any kisses this time around. And I shouldn't have even done that, because the first person to greet us was Aunt Dorothy, who always kisses me full on the lips. As soon as I was out of Mom's sight, though, I went straight for the first thing I could find to wipe my face. Turned out to be the curtains. Good thing I was standing by a window. Most of the family was already at Gammy's house by the time we got there. It would take me forever to describe every single person who was there, so I'll just stick with the highlights. My cousin Benji was there with his parents, Aunt Patricia and Uncle Tony. The last time I saw Benji, he could only say two things. No!
No.
And shut up!
Shut up.
Benji can speak in full sentences now, and his parents say he's reading chapter books. But I wouldn't be bragging if my son could read and still wasn't potty trained. Great Uncle Arthur was in the den, sitting in the recliner in front of the TV. I don't think I've ever had an actual conversation with Great Uncle Arthur, because all he does is grunt and make these random sounds like, He stayed with us one Thanksgiving weekend, and it was like that the whole time. I can't tell you if he's trying to communicate or what, but every once in a while, I respond, just in case. No, thank you. Great Aunt